After my mother passed away, I became the only legitimate daughter under the care of the mistress. Relying on my status, I became the mistress of the Governor General of Jiangnan's mansion. My husband and I lived in harmonious bliss, with a lifetime of glory, filial children and grandchildren, and a life free from worries. After my death, Xiao Qi personally kept vigil for me for 3 days. The last words he spoke to me by the spirit tablet were, "In this life, my duties as a husband have been fulfilled. I only pray that in the next life, we never meet again." After being reborn, I fulfilled his wish for him. At this time of year, the Jiangnan region is in the midst of its rainy season. I didn't hold an umbrella, leaning on the shore watching the figure struggling in the distance, without taking any action. After a moment, an umbrella quietly appeared above me. It was Mama Qin, who was always by my mother's side, I thought. With your affection for Xiao Qi since childhood, you would rush to save him without regard for your own safety. My mother walked up to me, squinting at the figures in the distance, but I couldn't help but feel that she was actually looking at me. I slowly took a deep breath and knelt down in the pouring rain. It's because she holds so tightly to this bond that she won't come to save me. What my daughter wants is heartfelt love, not the entanglement of a life debt, whether he's saved or not. It makes no difference. After a long silence, the mother sighed softly and instructed the servant beside her, "Go and pull him up. After all, he's the Governor General. We can't afford any mishaps." She looked down at me from above until my knees felt the chill of frost, then reached out and helped me up. "Very well. When your father passed away, everyone mocked my Yang family, yet we weathered it all. If we could endure it back then, we can surely do so now, since you've made up your mind. I'm not the sort of person who would trade my daughter for favor and grace." A flicker of emotion stirred in my heart, and I knelt once more. "Thank you, Mother, for your understanding. I always believed that the genuine affection between Xiao Qi and me outweighed any sense of obligation, but I never imagined that his wish in the previous life was to ensure we would never meet again in future lives. So in this life, I will grant his wish." After several days of heavy rain, there finally seemed to be signs that it would soon stop. I heard the lotus flowers were blooming especially beautifully, so I accepted an invitation and boarded a decorated boat to sail across the lake. As the two boats collided, I was jolted inside the cabin, spilling the my juice I was holding. The young girl looked startled. The governor jumped onto our boat, saying, "He wants to see the young lady." As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Qi lifted the curtain and entered the cabin. He was always elegant, but his movements now carried a hint of anger, his handsome eyebrows knitted together, his voice as cold as ever. "I wasn't mistaken that day. It was you standing on the shore. You knew I've never been good at swimming since I was a child. So why did you stand by and watch me struggle without offering help? Yang Wn, just because I rejected the embroidered handkerchief you sent to my residence, you could just watch me die." The questioning and disappointment in his eyes pierced through my soul like a sharp sword. No matter how many times we start over, he always seems to wound me effortlessly. I averted my gaze and lowered my head with a faint smile. "Mistress, you misunderstand. I was unwell that day and truly could not enter the water." A sharp mockery spread across his eyes. "Unwell? Back then, when bandits invaded the city, you threw yourself in front of me to block a knife, risking your life. You used your to force my father into arranging our marriage. Now, can you really let such a perfect opportunity slip by? Just because you're desperate to reuse the same tactic." I've patrolled the embankment daily, and nothing ever happened, yet on that day, right when I was alone, a child suddenly appeared and shoved me into the water. "Yang Wani, isn't this exactly what you've done on purpose to create an opportunity? And pretending to act so innocently, was it to make me look at you more favorably?" Hearing his undisguised malicious speculation, my heart felt as if it had been torn into countless pieces. No wonder when I risked my life to save him in the previous life. The look in his eyes was only malice and disappointment, so it turned out that all of this, in his eyes, was just a scheme I set up to force him to marry me. I laughed at myself inwardly, holding back the slight stinging in my nose as I began to explain. "I know I've bothered you for many years. I certainly won't in the future. No need to keep acting." With a wave of his sleeve, he interrupted me. turning his back and refusing to face me, as if even a single glance at me was repulsive. Lord Yang has been kind enough to teach me, and the promise he made to my father will not be overturned by me. I will marry you, making you the only mistress of the governor's mansion. But you will never have my heart." With that, he strode away. Through the lifted curtain, I saw the woman in green in the opposite cabin. She made no attempt to hide the delight in her eyes, and the moment the curtain fell, she unleashed all her malice. It was Yang Wansi, my friend, who was with me. Refilled my glass with pity in his eyes. I raised my hand and drank it all in one gulp, a bitter smile unconsciously creeping onto my face. Xiao Qi and I, we weren't like this at the beginning. He wasn't like this when I threw myself in front of him to take a knife for him, without regard for my own safety. My blood stained his clothes, and he held me as if I were a precious treasure, his voice trembling with panic as he begged in my ear. "Wnyi, I'll do anything, as long as you live." But that didn't include marrying me. After our fathers arranged the engagement, the pleading in his eyes turned to hatred, as if saying, "Why don't you go die?" I was young then. And the thought of this marriage filled me with joy, but he forbade anyone from mentioning it, and he became increasingly distant from me. We grew up together, and I really couldn't understand why. It wasn't until our wedding day that Yang Wansi shaved her head and became a Buddhist nun, and he didn't enter the bridal chamber all night, sitting towards the direction of Nanshan Temple for the entire night. Only then did I realize that the person in his heart was her. After the marriage, in the eyes of the world, the governor of Jiangnan was young and promising, not only outstanding in his political achievements, but also an extremely affectionate and good husband. Besides the legal wife, he never took any concubines. The couple had a son and a daughter, living a life like immortals. There was a time when I thought the past had faded away, and he had finally seen the depth of my love. But I later learned that every month he would make an excuse to inspect the neighboring county, but in reality, he went to the Nanshan Temple. He specified that Master Wang Chen would accompany her, kneeling in the main hall for 3 days and 3 nights, transcribing scriptures and chanting Buddhist prayers to pray for the world. She added incense, he held the brush, and the two of them, under the guise of all living beings, obscurely spoke of the regret of unrequited love across the mortal world. In this life, how could I not fulfill them? On the way back to the mansion, my mother sent someone to summon me to the main hall. Seeing me arrive, she took a sip of tea and motioned for me to sit beside her. "Today, Xiao Qi sent someone with a letter, willing to honor the childhood betrothal and welcome you into his residence." A flicker of resolve stirred in my heart as I knelt and kowtowed. "Mother, I dare not agree to this marriage." She signaled Nanny Chin to help me up, her eyes hardening with coldness. "Even if you did agree, I would never let you marry him." Anger sharpened her voice. "He's willing to take you as his wife, but with a condition. He insists on elevating Wansi to concubine first, and her entry into the mansion must precede yours. She'll cross the threshold before your grand wedding." Mother's rage boiled over. She slammed her teacup to the ground, shattering it. "That scoundrel Xiao Qi has gone too far. He's merely a governor. If your father hadn't risked his life to vouch for him, he'd never have climbed so high at such a young age. When I was fighting battles alongside your grandfather, that boy was still running around playing. Now he dares to humiliate the legitimate daughter of the Yang mansion by letting a concubine marry first. What an insult! He has no shame. I originally planned to find Wansi a good husband after you married into the governor's mansion, letting her be a proper legal wife. But no, she's addicted to being a concubine. Neither Wansi nor I were born to mother. We were both daughters of concubines, having borne no children for years. Mother had intended to adopt one of us after our birth mothers passed away, making her the legitimate daughter of the Yang mansion. Wansi's mother had once been the top courtesan of Jiangnan's largest music hall, captivating father with her pipa playing. Wansi took after her, sweet-tongued, obedient, and skilled in singing and dancing. My own mother, however, came from a merchant family. She'd taught me to use an abacus and read account books from a young age, leaving me far less adept at currying favor. I'd thought mother would choose Wansi, but to my surprise, she picked me. The legitimate daughter of the Yang mansion must be a sensible, prudent woman with a sharp mind, she'd said, "Those fawning tricks are useless." That day, I suspect, Wansi began to hate me, yet even though she hadn't chosen Wansi as her heir, Mother had always cared for her sincerely. Memories of my past life flickered through my mind. Before I married, Mother had planned to betroth Wansi to her own nephew, Jiang Huai, the young general who struck terror into the hearts of Japanese pirates, but Wansi had stubbornly insisted on becoming a nun. Unable to dissuade her, Mother had relented. A decision crystallized in my heart. "I've heard that your nephew, General Jiang Huai, will enter Jiangnan City next month. Would I be honored to meet him? Mother, this life, I refuse to be confined forever to Jiangnan. I yearn to see the wider world beyond." Mother blinked in surprise, then burst into laughter. She stepped forward and patted my shoulder. "My judgment is never wrong. You're wiser than I imagined. Choosing to stay in a backyard because of mutual love is one thing, but clinging to unrequited devotion is sheer foolishness. Younger, you've chosen a broader sky." Tears glistened in her eyes. Once, she'd been a proud eagle soaring unyielding in the heavens only to settle on a branch for love. Mother sent word agreeing to Wansi and Xiaoqi's arrangement. Jiang Huai would enter the city in 20 days, and she deliberately kept this news secret. By imperial law, a concubine could never be promoted to legal wife before her husband married his primary spouse. Among officials, there was no such thing as a co-wife. A concubine could only be elevated after the legal wife's death, and even then, only after 10 years. The emperor, devoted to his empress, had kept his harem empty for years. No petition to promote a concubine to legal wife had ever been granted. Wansi was destined to remain a concubine forever. Xiaoqi was determined to give Wansi a grand wedding. For half a month, he spared no expense. Everyone in Jiangnan knew the governor was getting married. Don't be ridiculous. A concubine isn't a wife, she's just a mistress. The governor is welcoming his mistress first, then his wife. Isn't that slapping Miss Yang in the face? I heard Master Yang once risked his life to secure the governor's position. If he knew his only legitimate daughter was being humiliated like this, he'd roll over in his grave. Xiaoqi, sitting proudly on his horse in his wedding robes, accepting the congratulations of the people, scowled fiercely at the whispers. To him, this was just another way for the Yang family to repay a debt with humiliation. His anger lingered until he reached the Yang mansion, where it softened slightly at the sight of Wansi in her wedding dress. By tradition, only a legal wife could wear a bright red wedding gown, but Xiaoqi had arranged everything. The entire mansion was decorated in crimson. He was treating her as his legal wife. Mother sneered when she heard, but made no attempt to stop it, though she pointedly refused to appear for the tea ceremony to honor the elders. I stepped in to defuse the situation. "Mother is unwell today and cannot attend. Allow me to send my half-sister off. May the newlyweds live in harmony and eternal bliss." The absence of the mistress of the house was a laughingstock. Xiaoqi gritted his teeth, convinced I was sabotaging them, and glared at me with murderous rage. As if to vent his fury, he pulled Wansi closer, staring at me defiantly. Ignoring his gaze, I gestured for a servant to bring forward Mother's wedding gift. "These silver bracelets are from Mother. May they remind you to uphold propriety and virtue." Mother had worn jade bracelets all her life, and now, a pair of jade bracelets graced my wrists. The onlookers snickered at the shabby silver bracelets, and my words about propriety struck a humiliating blow. The hands that Wansi and Xiaoqi clasped so tightly were almost crushing each other. Mother knew exactly how to strike at their hearts. Mother never appeared. Even after all the guests had left, Xiaoqi stormed up to me, his eyes blazing as if he wanted to tear me apart. "Yang Wani, what a vicious scheme. Wansi's wedding had no mistress to send her off. And the only gift you gave her was a pair of plain silver bracelets. Are you trying to make everyone remember she's just a concubine of the Yang mansion? If you hadn't tricked Lady Yang into choosing you, the legitimate daughter's position should have been Wansi's. We wouldn't have to." I lifted my head and met his gaze. "Wouldn't have to what? Wouldn't have to reserve the legal wife's position for me, or wouldn't have to see the woman he cherished suffer such humiliation. He could have firmly refused me and married Wansi as his legal wife. Mother might have been angry for a few days, But she would have eventually agreed. Instead, he clung to his reputation, unwilling to break his promise and be labeled a traitor. He took all his resentment and cowardice out on me, refusing to admit his own weakness. Stunned by my retort, he swallowed the rest of his words. If you truly pity her, General, you can always make her your legal wife. I'm sure Mother would value her more then. Enraged, his glare turned even darker. Very well, so be it. No more pleasantries between us. What does it matter if you become my legal wife? I want you to know I will never care for you. With that, he stormed off. Wansi, who should have been in the wedding sedan chair, emerged from the shadows. General, hurt your feelings again for my sake, she purred, leaning close to my ear with a smirk. Living as a nun with only oil lamps and Buddha statues for company is such a hardship. How could I let you miss out on that experience? Before I could process the shocking truth she'd been reborn too she grabbed my hand and shoved me backward with all her strength. With a shrill scream, she tumbled into the lotus pond. Xiao Qi, who had turned back, stared in horror, pulled out of the water. Wansi leaned weakly in his arms, looking utterly pitiful. Don't be angry with her, she whispered. Sister has always loved you. I understand she's upset. Xiao Qi's eyes blazed with fury as he glared at me. Yang Wani, you're even more vicious than I thought. If anything happens to Wansi, I'll make you pay 100-fold. He was convinced I'd pushed her. Wansi gently tugged at his sleeve. Don't blame sister. If you must punish someone, make her pray for me at Nanshan Temple. After all, she's my elder sister. Xiao Qi lifted her into his arms and stared coldly at me. The legitimate daughter of the Yang mansion assaulted the governor's concubine. From this moment on, you will kowtow every 3 steps all the way to Nanshan Temple to pray for Wansi's recovery. He signaled his guards to drag me away by force. Who dares? Mother appeared, stepping protectively in front of me. Xiao Qi, losing all pretense of respect, oozed the arrogance of a man in power. Lady Yang. I still honor you as lady out of respect for the late Master Yang. But the Yang family has no one left in court. I, as a government official, have every right to punish members of your household. The Yang family might not, but Mother's family did. It seemed he'd never even considered that. Mother laughed bitterly. Repeating well done 3 times, her hand drifted to the whip tucked behind her waist, a whip she'd carried through countless battles, now unused for years. Seeing her intent, I quickly grabbed her hand. The Yang mansion was not what it once was. Confronting Xiao Qi head-on would be foolish. His anger at Mother's absence was manageable, but attacking a government official would only bring disaster upon us. I whispered in her ear, Mother, just a little longer. Once the general enters the city, everything will be all right. Stepping in front of her, I said firmly, I accept the punishment. I began my journey to Nanshan Temple, kowtowing every 3 steps. Before I even left the city, my forehead was covered in blood. The crowd murmured as they watched. Xiao Qi, holding Wansi protectively on his horse, stared at me from a distance. Husband, aren't you afraid sister will be angry? Wansi asked softly. Perhaps we should call this off. Xiao Qi withdrew his gaze from me, his tone indifferent. If you do something wrong, you must accept the punishment. Otherwise, after marrying into my Governor General's mansion, will my words still carry weight? Even if she is my future legal wife, she must never bully you. She desires me but cannot obtain me. She won't be petulant because of this matter. Rest assured, it's good to curb her arrogance. By the time I kowtowed all the way to Nanshan Temple, my face was already covered in blood. I gradually lost consciousness and fainted. The 2 guards who were ordered to watch over me panicked. What are we going to do? The master only ordered us to supervise her, but didn't say anything about what to do if she fainted. The blessing hasn't started yet, or else, drag her in. As I drifted into a deep sleep, a clear yet awkward voice rang out, you all may leave. I was vaguely scooped up and carried, smelling a scent that was both unfamiliar and familiar, just like back then. When I was stabbed, he picked me up in his arms. It was Xiao Qi, dressed in his wedding attire. Why wasn't he enjoying his wedding night, and instead came up the mountain with me? When I awoke, I was lying in a guest room at the temple. My head throbbed as if splitting apart, yet the wound was already neatly bandaged. You'd rather suffer punishment than offer an apology. I've already promised you the position of principal wife, how can you still be so intolerant of Xia? Xiao Qi offered me a cup of water at the right moment. Looking down at me from above, I didn't take the cup, turning my head slightly to the side, refusing to look at him. Since the adult isn't guarding his lovely wife in the residence, what are you doing following me? Xiao Qi was offended and grew somewhat angry. He gave a cold snort and slammed the cup heavily onto the wooden table. You staged this self-inflicted injury, didn't you, just to make me sympathize with you? I've placed Xia in the residence and came here to check on your condition. Your goal has been achieved. I didn't respond to him, only spoke softly. You and I have known each other since childhood, but in your heart, I am a scheming person who uses any means to gain favor. You have never believed me. I have never laid a hand on her. Xiao Qi was stunned for a moment, his tone tinged with anger. Even now, you still want to argue. I've already come to see you. Why do you still deny your own evil deeds? You're just angry that I took Xia into the manor before you. When are you going to stop being unreasonable? I closed my eyes. Unwilling to argue any further, my silence, however, became a retreat in his eyes. He softened his tone. I have already promised you the position of the main wife. You should be content. Once you marry into the governor's mansion, you will be the main wife to the outside world. Internally, you will be on equal footing with Xia. If you are well behaved, I will not make things difficult for you. Granting you a lifetime of glory is not difficult either. I know your feelings for me since childhood, but some things cannot be forced. If you don't bully Xia, I won't be angry with you. Marrying me has been your childhood wish, and now I am fulfilling your wish. You should be grateful and abide by the duties of the main wife, and treat Xia kindly. Considering your injury, I'll let the punishment slide this time. On the day you enter the house, just close the door and offer Xia a cup of tea, and we'll consider the matter closed. The more he spoke, the more outrageous it became, yet I didn't even have the desire to argue. Xiao Qi rushed back overnight to appease Yang Wansi. Upon hearing of my injury, my mother fainted and personally sent someone to fetch me back to the manor. She looked at the wound on my head with heartache, her eyes turning red. It's really too much to bully people. I reassuringly held her hand. My mother smiled at me gently. Huaya will arrive in Jiangnan tomorrow. This time, he's coming with an imperial decree. It turned out that after my mother knew my feelings, she wrote a letter to Jiang Huai. When he returned to Beijing to report on his duties, the emperor wanted to reward him. He used his military merits to exchange for the imperial marriage with me. My Huaya's parents passed away early, and I took care of him for a few years. He respected me as if I were his own mother. Later, I married your father, and he stayed in the military camp. Now that I've spoken, he would never refuse. I didn't expect my mother to directly ask Jiang Huai to request an imperial marriage decree. I originally wanted to meet him first and then talk about it later if we were meant to be. I was a little disappointed. For fear that another ill-fated romance would be formed, my mother sensed my concern and gently reassured me. Huaya, he has met you. My heart stirred slightly. When you were 12, you couldn't even lift the red tassel spear, yet you still followed me to practice morning exercises. Back then, Huaya was only 15, but he had already single-handedly beheaded a Japanese pirate general. The emperor specially allowed him to visit me, and he happened to see you. My mother's eyes burned intently. He said, if only you weren't born as a lady in this Jiangnan region. Now that this delicate Jiangnan girl is willing to experience the frontier scenery, do you think he would be pleased? My heart suddenly began to beat rapidly. I didn't meet him that day, but a scene involuntarily appeared in my mind. A young general, clad in armor, stared with precocious maturity at the little girl clumsily following her mother to learn moves within the red-tiled walls, sighing, it would be good if she hadn't been born a pampered young lady in this Jiangnan region. The young man's eyes held a sense of vicissitude, and for some inexplicable reason, I blushed a little. My mother smiled when she saw this. When Jiang Huai entered the city, Xiao Qi personally led people to welcome him. He was clad in armor, seated on his war horse, with the elite army that had followed him through life and death behind him. Xiao Qi cupped his fist in salute. Welcome, General, into the city. This humble official has prepared a humble banquet at the Governor-General's residence tonight to cleanse the dust for you. General, I hope you will do me the honor of attending." The rumors of the young general with the best manners didn't dismount and lazily stared at Xiao Qi. "I appreciate the governor's kindness, but I must decline. I'm only passing through Jiangnan on my way back to the frontier for a family visit, so I won't trouble you, sir. I still need to visit the Yang residence to see my aunt." Xiao Qi paused. He seemed to have never explored how the seemingly weak Madame Yang had supported the precarious Yang mansion after Master Yang's death. I silently put on my veil and disappeared into the crowd. Jiang Huai still went to the governor's mansion. It was Xiao Qi who personally came to invite him, including my mother and I, at the welcome feast. He filled a glass of wine and bowed respectfully before his mother. "Your son-in-law offended you the other day, mother. Please forgive me." His mother smiled ambiguously, but did not raise her glass. "You are too kind, my lord. You only call me that out of respect for my deceased husband. Sire never entered my chambers, so naturally I am not qualified to be your mother." Xiao Qi looked a little embarrassed, but Jiang Huai was here, so he couldn't lose his temper. He had no choice but to continue to humble himself. "What are you saying, mother? When Wani enters the manor in the future, you will naturally be my mother." Hearing these words, Yang Wansi, who was serving nearby, clenched her fists. A pot of fine wine, smashed by her on the ground, wasted. Jiang Huai finally stood up. "Have you drunk too much, General? The legitimate daughter of the Yang mansion is clearly my betrothed. How could she have married into your household?" Xiao Qi froze, a sudden surge of hostility flaring in his eyes. Jiang Huai merely pulled out his sword and wiped it calmly. At the sight, the hostility in Xiao Qi's gaze vanished without a trace. "You must be joking, General. Wani and I have been betrothed since childhood, as agreed by our fathers. That's an unchangeable fact. How could she possibly?" Jiang Huai had no patience for his rambling. He pulled out an imperial edict and held it aloft. At the sight of the edict, everyone in the room dropped to their knees. By the time the edict was read aloud, Xiao Qi's face was filled with utter disbelief. Even Yang Wansi was stunned. She had thought I would fight her to the death, replaying 100 scenarios of how she would torment me once I entered the governor's mansion. But she had never imagined this life. I had never wanted to compete with her for anything. I would never marry Xiao Qi. Jiang Huai first helped mother to her feet and escorted her back to her seat. Then, in full view of everyone, he lifted me up and wrapped my hand in his palm. The young general's eyes were sharp and bright, his burning gaze like a galaxy embracing me. I couldn't help but lower my head, yet I didn't pull my hand away. He leaned down, his lips brushing my ear, his voice soft enough only for me to hear. "Aunt said you agreed willingly. Now that the imperial edict has been issued, you can't back out." Overwhelmed with shyness, my reply was surprisingly straightforward. "I will never regret it." Jiang Huai smiled, witnessing our intimate gestures. Xiao Qi finally snapped out of his shock. He stood up abruptly, staring at me in outrage. "Yang Wani, you betrayed me. What audacity, to spite me. You even dared to forge an imperial edict." I looked at the agitated Xiao Qi with mixed feelings, suddenly realizing how poor my taste had been in my past life. What had I ever loved about such an arrogant, conceited man? After returning to the mansion, mother led Jiang Huai to her room to talk privately. As I was about to head to my own room, someone blocked my path. It was Xiao Qi. He stared at me coldly. Why is this happening?" I shrugged innocently. "You should ask His Majesty that question." Enraged, he reached out to grab me. I stepped back, keeping my distance. "Now that I have His Majesty's betrothal edict, I beg you to respect yourself, Governor." After hesitating for a moment, Xiao Qi stood rooted to the spot, his face dark with anger. "You knew, didn't you? You resented me for letting Wansi enter the mansion first, so you'd rather marry someone you don't love to force me to submit. I tell you, you're delusional. End this farce at once, and there may still be a way for us. Otherwise, I'll never give you another chance, nor will I ever forgive you." Tired of his conceit, I called for servants to drive him away. With Jiang Huai here, Xiao Qi's official position no longer held power over the Yang mansion. We decided to move the entire family to the border in a month's time, where Jiang Huai and I would marry. Mother would close the Yang mansion and join us on the journey. The delay was due to Jiang Huai's official duties. He hadn't come to Jiangnan merely to visit relatives. Jiangnan was suffering from severe floods, with dikes collapsing repeatedly and the people living in dire straits. As governor, Xiao Qi had not only failed to control the floods, but had also embezzled imperial disaster relief funds to fund his extravagant wedding to Yang Wanxi a few days earlier. Mother had mentioned all this in her letters to Jiang Huai. His Majesty was furious and had sent Jiang Huai to supervise the reconstruction of the dikes. Jiangnan was my hometown. I wanted nothing more than for it to thrive in peace. I fully supported Jiang Huai. While he was busy, I took it upon myself to inspect the progress of the dike repairs. It was on one such inspection that I encountered Xiao Qi. Seeing me out of breath, he snorted coldly. "The man you're marrying is nothing but a rude brute. He's willing to let you come to such a dangerous place. Unlike me, I'd never let Wanxi get so much as a scratch." He glared at me through gritted teeth. "Yang Wani, do you regret it now?" Ignoring him, I instructed my servants to distribute the food we had brought to the workers. Xiao Qi seemed unaware that His Majesty had ordered Jiang Huai to thoroughly investigate the embezzlement of disaster relief funds. He thought Jiang Huai was merely here for an inspection and would soon return to the border. As if to spite us, he continued to lavish himself with luxury, moving all manner of fine things into the governor's mansion. If Jiang Huai hadn't secretly brought additional funds, the dike repairs would have come to a complete halt long ago. "Yang Wani, how dare you ignore me?" His anger flared even more when I refused to respond. I turned to look at him. "Xiao Qi, how did you become such a monster?" The noble man who had once cared for the world in my eyes had transformed into a devil who prioritized his own desires over the safety of an entire city's people. If Jiangnan fell, the Japanese pirates lurking nearby would easily invade. How could he squander the country Jiang Huai had fought so hard to protect? Confronted with my accusation, he froze. Just then, Jiang Huai arrived. He handed me a box of jujube paste pastries from the famous shop in South City. "You've worked hard, I bought these specially for you." Xiao Qi snapped out of his daze and sneered, "A lousy box of pastries, and you treat it like a treasure." Jiang Huai didn't anger at the insult. Instead, he continued wiping his sword. With a swift, accidental flick, he sliced off the feather on top of Xiao Qi's official hat. Xiao Qi's face turned deathly pale, and his legs gave way, sending him crashing to his knees. Jiang Huai looked calm and unconcerned. "My apologies, Governor," I slipped. I let out a laugh. Jiang Huai turned to me, his gaze burning. "Aunt was right, you look lovely when you smile. You should do it more often." My face turned bright red. I turned away and picked up a pastry. It was sweet, sweeter than I'd ever tasted. None of us noticed the growing venom in Xiao Qi's eyes. The dikes of Jiangnan City collapsed completely in the middle of the night. Shrill screams jolted me awake. A wave of fear washed over me, and I instinctively reached for Mother and Jiang Huai. When I stumbled out of my room, hastily dressed, Mother and Jiang Huai were already fully armed in the courtyard. Jiang Huai's brows were furrowed in deep concern. The dikes were almost completed, and we used only the finest materials. There's no reason they should have collapsed like this. Mother pulled me close, protecting me. "Go check on the situation, leave Wani to me." Jiang Huai looked at me deeply, then nodded, huddled in Mother's arms. I felt a sudden urge to stand by his side through this crisis. I pulled away and straightened my back. "You raised me, Mother. I know you've never been content to be confined to the backyard. Father is gone, no one can hold you back anymore, not even me." I stepped forward and grasped the whip in her hand. "You once said that though I'm not your biological daughter, I'm the most like you. Mother, let's go together." Mother took a deep breath, let out a whistle, and a warhorse came galloping over. She swung herself onto the horse with practiced ease and held out her hand to me. "Huai and I were both right about you." As we raced through the city, I saw a side of Jiangnan I had never seen before. People fled in panic, their torn houses reduced to rubble. They cried out frantically for their loved ones amid the ruins. Jiangnan had become a living hell. The soldiers Jiang Huai had brought with him worked tirelessly to comfort the people. But there was no sign of Governor Xiao Qi. The scene at the dike was even more desolate. Jiang Huai stared thoughtfully at a section of the collapsed dike, his brows furrowed. When he saw me, a look of worry flashed across his face. Only after Mother nodded reassuringly did he compose himself. He bowed to her. "Aunt, it was sabotage." Before we could react, Xiao Qi appeared silently behind us. His eyes held a fanaticism and obsession I couldn't understand. "General, you failed to govern properly, bringing disaster to the entire city. Can you bear this responsibility?" On the day the imperial envoy arrived in Jiangnan, Xiao Qi arrived at the Yang mansion with Yang Wanxi in his arms. She glanced at Mother with disdain. "Some people are truly blind and foolish, mistaking fish eyes for pearls. If you had given me the position of legitimate daughter back then, you wouldn't be in this sorry state now." Xiao Qi had closed the city gates, trapping Jiang Huai's army outside. Forcing their way into a peaceful city would be considered treason. They dared not act rashly. The three of us were imprisoned in the Yang mansion. Xiao Qi stared at me intently. "This is the man you chose, a loser. Yang Wani, beg for my forgiveness now. I'll plead with His Majesty to clear you and Lady Yang of all blame. The position of legal wife in the governor's mansion is still yours." Yang Wanxi's face twisted with resentment at his words, but she quickly masked it and leaned into Xiao Qi's arms. I let out a cold laugh, walked to Jiang Huai's side, and took his hand. Mother had no patience for their antics. She drew her whip and lashed out. Both Xiao Qi and Yang Wanxi were hit squarely. Yang Wanxi clutched her wound, her face contorted with rage as she tried to pounce on us. But Xiao Qi held her back. "Lady Yang, why must you be so stubborn? Wouldn't it be better to live in peace as my mother-in-law?" A servant reported that the imperial envoy would arrive at the Yang mansion immediately. Anxiousness clouded Xiao Qi's eyes. "Wani, come here quickly. If you do, I'll overlook everything that's happened." "Why bother?" The three of us stood aside, not moving an inch. When the envoy arrived, Xiao Qi shook his head in defeat. "You brought this upon yourselves." He knelt before the envoy. "Jiang Huai failed in his duties and deserves to be punished by the court. As his aunt, Lady Yang may be complicit in his crimes, but Yang Wani was once betrothed to me. I beg you, Your Excellency, let me take her in and comfort her." The envoy let out a chuckle and signaled his men to surround us. Xiao Qi stood up confidently, his eyes filled with triumph as he looked at me. But he never imagined, the man the court had come to arrest was him, all along. "What's going on? Is there some mistake? The one who should be punished is Jiang Huai." The envoy smiled contemptuously. "Does Lord Xiao really think the emperor is blind and foolish? Do you really think your embezzlement of disaster relief funds is well hidden? Or do you think that since the emperor sent the general here, he wouldn't have a backup plan? Would you like this official to bring all the petty thieves who took your money that day, and have them recount in detail how you instructed them to breach the dikes and flood the people of Jiangnan?" Seeing the situation was unfavorable, Yang Xi was about to flee. The envoy drew his sword and pierced her chest directly. "The slander of the Yang family misled Lord Xiao. To be granted a complete corpse is already a great imperial grace." Before Yang Wanxi could react, she fell to the ground, struggling and dying. I will definitely do this again." I stared at her without a ripple of emotion. She no longer has the chance to be reborn. Xiao Qi had long been scared out of his wits. If he hadn't been restrained, he would probably have collapsed onto the ground like a pile of mud. Your Excellency, please investigate." This humble official was also confused by listening to slanderous words. "Please investigate, Your Excellency." The envoy sneered. "Lord Xiao, you should save these words for His Majesty." The envoy walked to Jiang Huai and changed his demeanor. "General, I'm sorry for the trouble." Jiang Huai walked to my side and said it was nothing. The day Xiao Qi was escorted back to the capital, he insisted on seeing me. I was busy comforting the disaster-stricken people and had no time to deal with him. I heard that the emperor had already taken notice of the problems in the Jiangnan region. This time, Xiao Qi won't survive more than 2 days in the capital. We did not return to our frontier post as planned, but stayed in Jiangnan for post-disaster reconstruction. It wasn't until the following spring that the new Governor-General took office in Jiangnan. Only then did we retire with honors. On the day we set off, Mother drove her horse wildly in the lead. I am still not very proficient, so Jiang Huai simply shared a horse with me. He shielded me in front of him, his tone laced with amusement. Once we reach the border, there's really no turning back. I leaned back slowly, no regrets. Jiang Huai galloped to catch up with his mother. I held the reins tightly, feeling the beat of his heart against my back. No regrets, nor does it harbor resentment.